For decades, we rolled our eyes at them. The jam jars saved under the sink, the hot water bottle instead of the heating, the walk to the shops when a car sat on the drive. We called them stuck in their ways, tight-fisted behind the times. But something strange has happened. One by one, the habits we mocked our grandparents for have become the very things wellness gurus, money experts, and scientists now beg us to adopt. Here are 25 that Britain got wrong. Before we begin, hit subscribe if you remember any of these, because number 1 is the one we lost that hurts the most. Let's count down from number 25. Number 25. The overstocked larder. Every nan had one. A cupboard under the stairs or a pantry off the kitchen, stacked 3 tins deep with beans, peas, corned beef and condensed milk. Enough to see the family through a fortnight without a single trip to the shops. The younger generation called it hoarding, joked that she was expecting another war. She just smiled and carried on. Then 2020 arrived, the shelves emptied overnight, and suddenly the woman with 40 tins of soup looked less like a relic and more like a genius. Food security experts now call it exactly what she practiced, keeping a deep pantry. A well-stocked larder cost her a few extra shillings a week, but bought something no supermarket sells. The quiet confidence that come strike, storm, or shortage, nobody under her roof would go without. We laughed. She was simply ready. Number 24. Darning and mending. There was always a work basket by her chair, a wooden mushroom for darning, a tangle of odd threads, and a tin of buttons salvaged from every worn-out shirt for 30 years. When a sock wore through at the heel, she did not bin it. She darned it, weaving the wool back and forth until the hole vanished, and a jumper with a frayed cuff got turned and stitched rather than thrown away. Her grandchildren thought it faintly embarrassing, wearing mended clothes when the shop sold new ones for a few pounds. Today, that same skill has a fashionable name: visible mending. And influencers photograph their patched jeans for millions of likes while the fast fashion mountain grows by the second. She was not being tight. She understood that a thing worth having was a thing worth keeping, and that a needle and thread could outlast any trend. Number 23. The washing line. Rain or shine, Monday was wash day, and the garden bloomed with sheets snapping in the wind, pegged out in a strict order only she understood. When tumble dryers arrived, humming and warm, people pitied the woman still hauling a basket down the path, still watching the sky for the first spot of rain. Backward, they said. Why work when a machine will do it? But she knew what the science now confirms. Line-dried washing lasts longer because the heat of a dryer shreds the fibers a little more with every load. It smells of a freshness no bottle can fake, and it costs precisely nothing to run, while the dryer quietly devours more electricity than almost anything else in the modern home. As energy bills climbed and climbed, that humble length of rope between 2 poles started to look less like drudgery and more like wisdom. Number 22. Handwritten letters and cards. She kept a drawer of writing paper, a good pen, and a book of stamps, and not a birthday, a bereavement, or a kindness passed without a card dropping through the letterbox in her looping hand. To the young, it seemed a fuss. Why write when you could ring? And later, why write when you could text in seconds? They teased her for it, gently. Yet psychologists now find that the simple act of writing by hand, of choosing words slowly and posting them into the world, lifts the mood of both sender and receiver in a way no notification ever will. A text is forgotten by tea time. Her letters were kept in shoeboxes, tied with ribbon, read again years after she had gone. In an age drowning in messages, she understood the rarest thing of all was to be truly thought of. Number 21. Net curtains. They hung in every front window in the street, filtering the light to a soft grey and hiding the room within from passing eyes. The modern eye called them fussy, old-fashioned, the very symbol of net-twitching suburbia. Rip them down, went the fashion, let the light flood in. And then came floor-to-ceiling glass, open-plan living, and the slow realization that a home with nothing at the window is a home on display to the whole street, and a good deal colder for it. That thin veil of net did more than she was given credit for. It kept the sun from fading the furniture, it softened the draught from a single glazed pane, and it gave a family the simple dignity of privacy without shutting out the day. Interior designers now sell the very same effect under grander names. Nan just called it net. Number 20. The hot water bottle. Come October, the central heating stayed off and warmth arrived instead in a rubber bottle wrapped in a knitted cover, tucked between the sheets a half hour before bed. Grandchildren rolled their eyes at the ritual, at being handed a bottle and a spare cardigan when the thermostat sat right there on the wall. Turn the heating up, they said. But she was heating the person, not the house, and there is a world of difference in the bill. As energy prices tripled and families shivered through winters they could no longer afford to warm, the hot water bottle staged a quiet comeback, celebrated by money-saving experts as one of the cheapest ways to stay warm ever devised. A few pennies of boiled water against a radiator running all night. She was never being mean, she was being clever, and she slept like a log. Number 19. Layering up indoors. Before the first bill of winter landed, out came the vests, that thin layer worn under everything, along with a cardigan kept on the back of every chair and a blanket folded over the settee. Put a jumper on was practically the family motto, delivered whenever a child complained of the cold. It was mocked as meanness, as living in a fridge to save a few coppers. Yet the principle is exactly what every energy advisor now preaches. Warm the body first and let the house stay a degree or two cooler. A merino base layer sells for a fortune today, marketed as technical outdoor kit, and does precisely what her string vest did in 1960. She simply understood that comfort did not have to mean cranking the dial, and that a jumper never sent a bill through the door. Number 18. Jam making and preserving. When the plums came in glut or the blackberries hung heavy in September, she did not let them rot. Out came the great pan, the jars saved all year, and the kitchen filled with the sweet, sticky steam of fruit and sugar boiling down to something that would last till spring. Rows of pots lined the shelf, labelled and dated, each one a small insurance against the lean months. Younger relatives thought it a terrible faff. Why bother when a jar cost pennies at the co-op? But walk into a farm shop today and see what a jar of proper handmade preserve fetches, or watch the preserving pans fly off the shelves each autumn as a new generation rediscovers it. She turned a hedgerow full of free fruit into a year of breakfasts. Nothing ripened on her watch without earning its keep. Number 17. Saving jars, string and bags. Open any drawer in her kitchen and you might find it. The ball of string grown fat over decades. The elastic bands slipped off the postman's bundle. The neatly folded carrier bags stuffed into one bag hung behind the door, and a shelf of clean jars awaiting a purpose. It was the very picture of what people laughed at as hoarding, the punchline in 100 jokes about the war generation. But look closely, and it was nothing of the sort. It was a household that threw almost nothing away, decades before the word recycling existed, and long before zero waste became a movement with its own shops and hashtags. A jar became a storage tin, a bag was used 100 times, a length of string tied 1,000 parcels. She generated less rubbish in a year than a modern family does in a week. We called it clutter. It was conscience. Number 16. The allotment. Every spare evening and Saturday morning, off he went to the plot with a flask and a fork, coming home with muddy boots and a barrow of potatoes, runner beans and marrows the size of a small child. It was written off as an old man's hobby, a quaint way to pass the retirement, faintly comic with its sheds and its prize leak rivalries. Now the joke has turned. Council allotment waiting lists in some towns stretch to a decade or more, packed with young families desperate for a patch of earth to grow their own. What was dismissed as eccentric is now understood as one of the healthiest things a person can do. Fresh air, gentle exercise, real food, and a purpose that gets you out of the chair. He grew half the family's vegetables for the price of a few seed packets and lived long and well doing it. The plot was never a hobby. It was a way of life we are only now trying to reclaim. Number 15. Walking everywhere. She never learned to drive, and never felt the poorer for it. To the shops and back, to church, to her sister's 3 streets over, to the bus stop and beyond. Everything was done on foot, a wicker basket over one arm, in all weathers, well into her 80s. The car-owning generation pitied her a little, assumed she simply couldn't afford otherwise. Yet those miles she clocked up without thinking are exactly what doctors now prescribe at great expense. The fabled 10,000 steps, movement woven into the fabric of the day rather than bolted on at a gym. She had strong legs, a clear head, and a bus pass she barely needed. While the modern world drives to a leisure centre to walk on a machine that goes nowhere, she had already walked her whole life, and it kept her upright and sharp long after her sofa-bound juniors had seized up. Number 14. Keeping chickens. At the bottom of the garden stood the coop, half a dozen hens scratching about, and every morning brought a warm handful of eggs still flecked with straw. Neighbours found it faintly ridiculous, a throwback to the countryside in a world of supermarket cartons. Why keep livestock when a dozen eggs cost so little? Then egg prices leapt, shortages emptied the shelves, and suddenly the woman with her own laying flock was the envy of the street. Fresh eggs for the cost of a bag of feed, hens that turned kitchen scraps into breakfast, and droppings into garden gold, and the quiet pleasure of knowing exactly where your food came from. It is one of the fastest growing hobbies in Britain today, sold to a new generation as sustainable, wholesome, and wise. She was decades ahead, out there in her wellies at dawn, gathering what the rest of us now queue for. Number 13. Foraging. Come late summer, out she went with a basin and stained fingers, filling it with blackberries from the hedgerow, picking rosehips, sloes, elderflowers, and the odd bag of field mushrooms, known only to those who knew where to look. To pick your food from the wild was seen by some as scrounging, the mark of someone who couldn't stretch to the greengrocer. How the wheel has turned. Foraging now graces the menus of restaurants where a single wild-picked plate costs more than her weekly shop, and courses teaching people to identify a bramble sell out in minutes. She knew every hedge and verge for a mile, knew what was ripe and when, and turned a country walk into a full larder for nothing but the effort. Free food, fresh air, and knowledge passed down through generations, mocked as making do, now marketed as the height of good living. Number 12. The housekeeping book. In a hard-backed notebook kept in the sideboard drawer, she wrote it all down. Every shilling in, every penny out, the rent, the coal, the insurance man's weekly call, right down to the halfpenny, balanced to the last coin before she'd let herself sleep. The habit was seen as the fussing of a penny pincher, a joyless obsession with money that a modern, easier world had surely outgrown. Except that budgeting is now the great financial gospel of the age, repackaged for social media as loud budgeting and sold in apps to millions who never learned to do it by hand. She knew to the penny what she had and what she owed, was never once caught short, and never paid a day's interest in her life. That plain notebook did what no app quite manages. It made her the absolute master of her money and let her sleep at night. Number 11. Saving up before buying. If she wanted something, a new coat, a settee, a washing machine, she saved for it, coin by coin, week by week, until the money was there, and only then did she buy. Buying on the never-never, on hire, purchase and tick, was regarded in her house as something close to a sin. The younger generation found this hopelessly old-fashioned in a world of instant credit, catalogues, and now a buy now, pay later button on every checkout. But watch the debt figures climb, watch a generation drown in interest on things they couldn't afford, and her stubbornness starts to look like the soundest financial advice ever given. She owned everything in her home outright. She was beholden to no one. The wait, she knew, was part of the pleasure, and a thing bought with saved money was a thing that never kept her awake with worry. Number 10. Composting and wasting nothing. Nothing edible ever reached her bin. Peelings, tea leaves, eggshells and cabbage stalks went to the compost heap or the chickens or straight onto the garden, and last night's leftovers reappeared, transformed as today's lunch. The very idea of scraping a good plate of food into the rubbish would have struck her as close to wicked. For a while, this careful thrift looked old-fashioned in an age of plenty when food was cheap and waste was easy. But Britain now throws away millions of tons of perfectly good food a year, at vast cost to both the purse and the planet, and every council is desperately trying to teach people the exact habits she practiced without a second thought. Her compost fed the garden that fed the family in an endless, elegant circle. She never heard the word sustainability in her life. She simply lived it, because throwing good things away was something she could not bring herself to do. Number 9. Handicrafts by the fire. Her hands were never still of an evening. As the wireless played, the needles clicked out jumpers, socks and blankets. Or she crocheted, embroidered and mended, producing over a winter what would cost a small fortune in the shops. To later eyes it seemed a fusty way to pass the time, a granny's hobby, faintly comic beside the glow of the television. Yet those same quiet crafts are now prescribed by the wellness industry as mindfulness in motion, proven to lower stress, ease anxiety, and keep the aging mind sharp and nimble. She was not merely making a cardigan, she was steadying her nerves, occupying her hands, and creating something real and lasting in a way a scrolling screen never can. Wool shops are booming again as a frazzled generation rediscovers what she always knew, that there is a deep, unhurried peace in making a thing slowly, stitch by patient stitch. Number 8. The proper sit-down tea break. Come 11 o'clock and again at 4, everything stopped. The kettle went on, the good cups came out, and she sat, properly sat, not standing at the counter, for a cup of tea and a biscuit and a moment of calm before the day pressed on again. In our hurried, always-on world, this looked almost lazy, an indulgence a busy modern life could not afford. But burnout is now the great affliction of the age, and every well-being expert alive pleads with us to do precisely what she did, to pause, to rest deliberately, to give the mind a moment to settle. That ritual break was not idleness. It was the pressure valve that let her keep going, day after day, decade after decade, without ever running herself into the ground. She understood, long before it was fashionable, that a person who never rests is a person about to break. Number 7. Buying quality that lasts. She owned few things, but the things she owned were good. A solid wood table, a heavy cast iron pan, a winter coat chosen with care and worn for 20 years, mended when it needed it and handed on when it didn't. The idea was to buy the best you could afford and buy it once, and to a throwaway generation raised on cheap and plentiful, this seemed almost quaint. Why pay more when you could replace it for a few pounds? But a landfill groaning with fast fashion and flat pack that fell apart in a year has taught a hard lesson, and buy it for life is now a rallying cry among the very young. Her cast iron pan will outlive her grandchildren. Her furniture was passed down, not skipped. She spent more at the counter and far less over a lifetime, and left behind things worth keeping rather than a trail of the disposable. Number 6. Eating with the seasons. Strawberries meant June, sprouts meant Christmas, and there was no expectation of either at any other time of year. She ate what was in season and what was grown near, because that was what the greengrocer had and what her purse could stretch to, and it never occurred to her to want a raspberry in January. The supermarket age made this look terribly limited. Why settle for turnips when the whole world's produce sat on the shelf year-round? Yet we now understand the cost of that endless summer. Food flown thousands of miles, picked unripe, costing the earth in every sense, and often tasting of nothing at all. Seasonal, local eating is now the gospel of every chef and health writer worth their salt. She ate a strawberry at the peak of its sweetness and savoured it because it would not come again for a year, and it tasted all the better for the wait. Number 5. Cooking from scratch. Nearly everything that reached her table began as raw ingredients and her own 2 hands. The pastry rubbed cold, the stock simmered from bones, the bread kneaded on a floured board, and not a jar of sauce or a ready meal in sight. As convenience food swept in, all bright packets and 3-minute dinners, cooking everything yourself looked like needless martyrdom, an old woman making hard work of what a factory could do faster. Now the tide has turned hard against ultra-processed food, with study after study linking it to ill health, and doctors urging the nation to do the one thing she did every single day: cook real food from real ingredients. She knew exactly what went into every meal because she put it there herself. No hidden salt, no strange additives, no list of ingredients she couldn't pronounce. Just proper food, made properly, the way we are all now being told we ought to eat. Number 4. Early nights and early rising. She was in bed not long after the news and up with the light, and she kept those hours whether it was a workday or not, her body running like clockwork on a rhythm she never broke. In a world of late-night television and now the endless glow of the phone, this seemed hopelessly dull. Bed at 10 when the night was only just beginning. But sleep science has become one of the great obsessions of modern health, and every expert now begs us to do exactly what she did without a second thought. Keep regular hours, rise with the day, and put the screens away long before bed. She woke rested, clear, and ready, decade after decade, while a sleep-deprived generation pops pills and buys gadgets, chasing the rest she got for free. Her secret was no secret at all. She simply went to bed. Number 3. The Sunday roast ritual. Whatever else the week held, Sunday meant the whole family round one table, the joint carved at its head, the good plates out, and no one leaving until the last of the gravy was mopped up and the talk had run its course. As lives grew busy and scattered, as meals became something grabbed alone in front of a screen, this weekly gathering came to seem old-fashioned, a lovely idea nobody quite had time for anymore. But loneliness and disconnection now stalk the modern family, and psychologists point to the shared, unhurried meal as one of the simplest, most powerful things we can do for our happiness and our children's. That roast was never really about the food. It was the fixed point in the week where a family remembered it was a family, where news was shared and belonging was quietly renewed. We let it slip. We are only now realizing what it held together. Number 2. Taking pride in your appearance. She would not so much as put the bins out without her hair done and a bit of lipstick on, and Sunday best meant exactly that. Proper clothes, polished shoes, a coat brushed and buttoned, whatever the state of the purse. To a dressed-down age of loungewear and leggings, this looked stiff and needlessly formal, a fussy hangover from a more buttoned-up time. But there is real truth in it that psychology now confirms, that how we dress shapes how we feel, that making an effort with your appearance lifts the spirit and steadies the day, a small act of self-respect worn on the outside. She was not showing off. She was telling the world and herself that she mattered, that the day was worth dressing for. A generation now rediscovering the mood-lifting power of getting properly dressed is only catching up with what she practiced at the mirror every single morning. And finally, number 1. Knowing your neighbours. The greatest of them all, the habit we mocked most and miss most, was simply this. She knew everyone in her street, and they knew her. The door was rarely locked in daylight. A cup of sugar was always going one way or the other, and no one was ill, bereaved, or struggling without a casserole appearing and a knock at the door. The younger world found it nosy, that endless knowing of everyone's business, and prized instead its privacy, its independence, its right to be left alone. And left alone we now are. An epidemic of loneliness sweeps the country, the old die unnoticed for weeks, and doctors' right of isolation as a killer to rival smoking. She had none of it, because her street was a web of small kindnesses and constant care, a community in the truest sense, watching out for its own. That was never nosiness. It was the oldest safety net there is, and we tore it down and called it progress. Of everything on this list, this is the one we would give the most to have back. They were mocked for all of it. The saved jars, the walk to the shops, the darned socks, the knock at the neighbour's door. Stuck in their ways, we said. Behind the times. Yet here we are, one trend and one study at a time, trying to buy back the very life they lived for free. Perhaps they weren't behind the times at all. Perhaps they were simply right, and we are only now catching up. Try one of these this week, then tell me in the comments which habit your nan had that we were all too quick to laugh at.